The older male doctor's voice was warm, clear, and calm, with a deep timbre and a deliberately slow, thoughtful pace. Some seniors are quietly pushing their loved ones away without even realizing it. In today's video, I'm exposing the 3 ugly habits in old age that silently drive people to avoid you, even when they still love you. These habits are rarely talked about because they're too uncomfortable to admit out loud. I learned this the hard way when I overheard a 70-year-old neighbor's grandson whisper, "I love him, but I just don't want to be around him sometimes." That broke my heart, but it also opened my eyes. I'm Vernon. After years of watching people grow old, I've discovered that while some elders become cherished, others, good people, start to repel even those closest to them. Let me show you why and how to avoid becoming one of them. If you believe it's never too late to change, even after 60, please like and subscribe to support this channel, because what I'm about to share might just save your most valuable relationships. Let's start with the first habit that slowly pushed people away from Mr. Harlan. 1. Habit 1. Constant complaining. Every Tuesday for 15 years, the same scene played out at May's Diner. 8 friends, familiar booths, lukewarm coffee, and endless conversation. Mr. Harlan was a fixture of those mornings until his seat sat empty. It started so gradually, none of us really noticed at first. Harlan would walk in, and before his coat was even off, it began. Traffic's getting worse every day, young drivers don't know how to drive, and don't get me started on these gas prices. Then he'd sit down and it would continue. My back's killing me, and the doctor, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's always something with the weather, too hot, too cold, too whatever. And don't even get me started on the government. As for kids these days, no respect at all. I remember one particular Tuesday. It was spring, beautiful morning, birds singing, and Harlan walked in looking like he'd been personally insulted by the sunshine. "Too bright," he muttered, "hurts my eyes, and all that chirping gives me a headache." Harold, our retired pharmacist, tried to lighten the mood. He said, "Well, at least it's not raining," he said, with a chuckle. Harlan's response? "Rain's coming. I can feel it in my joints. Gonna have a miserable week." The thing is, we all had aches and pains. We all worried about the state of the world. We all had days when everything felt harder than it used to. But somewhere along the way, Harlan had turned complaining into his default language. What broke my heart was watching it happen. Each week, I'd see one less person engage with him. Conversations would die when he approached. Eyes would dart away when he started talking. Not because they didn't care about him, they did. But emotional energy is precious at our age, and nobody wants to spend their coffee time swimming in a sea of negativity. You know that feeling? Just a few minutes into a conversation and you're already looking for an exit? It's not rude, it's your brain kicking into self-preservation mode. According to Stanford researchers, we instinctively distance ourselves from chronic complainers within minutes. Emotional drain is real, and our minds know it. The tragedy is that underneath all that complaining, Harlan was crying out for connection. He was scared, lonely, probably in pain. But instead of asking for help or sharing his real feelings, he wrapped himself in complaints like armor that kept everyone at a distance. By last fall, that Tuesday morning group had dwindled to 5. Harlan still came, but the dynamic had changed. The warmth was gone, the laughter was forced, and eventually even he stopped coming. Sometimes we lead with complaints, hoping to feel less alone. But it's worth pausing to ask yourself, am I sharing my struggles to connect, or am I just spreading the weight of my burdens to everyone around me? Feel free to share your perspective in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Complaining may push people away, but the next habit, it can close hearts even faster, especially when it's disguised as love.
2. Habit 2. Giving unwanted advice. The second habit that slowly pushed people away from Mr. Harlan was harder to spot because it came from a place of genuine care. But good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes. I'll never forget the evening I was watering my tomatoes when I heard raised voices from Harlan's backyard. His grandson Jake, a bright 28-year-old, was visiting with his girlfriend. They were having what seemed like a pleasant conversation about Jake's new job in digital marketing. "It's challenging," Jake was saying, "but I'm learning so much about social media algorithms and—" "Social media?" Harlan interrupted. "That's not a real job, son. You need to get into something stable, manufacturing, construction, something with your hands. This computer nonsense won't last." I watched Jake's face change. His girlfriend squeezed his hand. "Grandpa, this is really a good opportunity. The company is growing, and I'm passionate about—" "Passionate?" Harlan scoffed. "Passion doesn't pay the bills. When I was your age, I worked at the steel mill. 43 years, never missed a day. That's how you build a life, not with this internet foolishness." The conversation died right there. Jake excused himself shortly after, and I noticed he didn't hug his grandfather goodbye like he usually did. What stung wasn't the disagreement, it was the silence that followed. Harlan loved Jake deeply and feared he was making a mistake, but rather than seeking to understand, he leaned on what he knew from half a century ago, closing the door before the conversation could even begin. I've seen this pattern repeat itself countless times. Adult children sharing their struggles with parenting, only to be told they're too soft on their kids. Grandchildren talking about their relationships, only to hear lectures about how marriage worked in my day. Friends discussing their dreams, only to be shot down with reality checks that feel more like dream crushers. Imagine reaching out for a hug and getting a lecture instead. That's how 67% of adult children feel, according to the American Association of Retired Persons. Criticized instead of supported when they open up to aging parents. The heartbreaking twist, the more we try to help with advice, the more we push them away. The difference between wisdom and unwanted advice is permission. Harlan never asked if Jake wanted his input. He never inquired about the industry or tried to understand the opportunities. He simply imposed his worldview on a generation living in a completely different reality. I started noticing that people stopped sharing good news with Harlan because they knew it would be met with warnings. They stopped sharing struggles because they knew it would be met with solutions that didn't fit their actual problems. Harlan had incredible wisdom to offer. 43 years of work ethic, decades of problem solving, a lifetime of perseverance. But he packaged it in judgment instead of curiosity, in criticism instead of support. Some walls are built with words meant to help. Others rise in silence when the outside world starts reflecting how little we care for ourselves on the inside. What comes next reveals one of the quietest yet most powerful reasons people begin to pull away. It's a part of the story you won't want to miss.
3. Habit 3. Letting go of self-care. First impressions are formed in the blink of an eye. 7 seconds to be exact, says a study by the University of California. And how we groom ourselves is often the silent language people use to accept or exclude us. This was the third habit that gently but steadily placed distance between Mr. Harlan and his world. Thursday morning, I saw it. Harlan was wearing that navy blue shirt again, the one from Tuesday, coffee stain and all. Friday, same shirt, same stain. Saturday, more stains, more wear. It looked like it had been through a week of meals, but not a single wash. At first, I thought maybe he was just having a rough patch. We all have those days when getting dressed feels like climbing a mountain. But this became his new normal. His hair, once neatly combed, started looking greasy and unkempt. His fingernails grew long and dirty. There was a persistent smell that followed him, not offensive exactly, but the scent of someone who'd stopped caring about the details that make us feel human. I overheard Mrs. Patterson from down the street talking to her daughter. "I feel terrible saying this, but I just can't invite Harold over anymore. The smell, and he looks so... I don't know how to help him without hurting his feelings." The tragedy wasn't that Harlan was struggling. It was that his struggle was becoming everyone else's discomfort. People started avoiding him not out of cruelty, but because they literally didn't know how to address the elephant in the room. I think what happened to Harlan happens to many of us after 60. We start thinking that appearance doesn't matter anymore. I'm too old for people to care how I look. I'm retired. I don't need to impress anyone. What's the point of getting dressed up when I'm just going to the grocery store? But here's what I learned from watching Harlan disappear from our community. Self-care isn't vanity. It's a form of respect. Respect for ourselves and respect for the people who have to be around us. The most heartbreaking part was watching how his neglect of his appearance affected his own confidence. He started hunching over more, making less eye contact, speaking quieter. It was as if he was trying to make himself invisible, and sadly, it was working. When we stop caring for ourselves, we're sending a message to the world that we're not worth caring for. And eventually, the world starts to believe us. Personal hygiene and basic grooming aren't about vanity or impressing others. They're about maintaining our dignity and our place in the human community. They're about showing up for life even when life feels hard. Some messages deserve to stay with us a little longer. Feel free to save this story as a quiet companion for days when showing up feels a little heavier.
3 months ago, I watched a moving truck pull away from Mr. Harlan's house. His family had moved him to an assisted living facility, not because he couldn't take care of himself physically, but because he'd become so isolated, so disconnected from his community, that they were worried about his mental health. The 3 habits, constant complaining, giving unwanted advice, and letting go of self-care, had quietly stolen away his place in the world. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually, like water wearing away stone. Every single one of these habits was fixable. Every single one was a choice he could have made differently. If you're watching this video, if you're still curious enough to listen, still willing to look at yourself honestly, you're already ahead of the game. Growth doesn't stop at 60 or 70 or 80. It stops when we stop listening. Aging brings a quiet choice. Some grow into the kind of elder others instinctively avoid, draining energy, dimming conversations. Others become the ones people are drawn to, whose presence brings warmth, wisdom, and ease. What's one small change you're willing to make today to become the kind of person others want to be around? Share it in the comments. Your courage might inspire someone else to take that same step. If you believe it's never too late to grow, never too late to change, never too late to become the person people want to be around, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you're interested in learning more about building meaningful connections later in life, check out our video, 3 Things Men Do Only for Women They Truly Love, Advice for Love After 60. You can find the link in the description below.